do want to mention the passing. I will get to Clarence Thomas in a moment. I do want to mention the passing of a brilliant filmmaker, a guy named William Friedkin. You know him from The French Connection, from The Exorcist, from To Live and Die in L.A. He is not only an Oscar-winning director, but he was a brilliant speaker and a brilliant communicator. I saw him many times do Q&A before screenings of The Exorcist, French Connection, etc. And he really brings to life the filmmaker's dilemma and some of the stuff that he was doing. His films were brilliant. I hate to keep using that word, but indeed the case. One of the most famous sequences in film chase history was the chase in The French Connection. Now, the chase in The French Connection, all you need to know is, for those who didn't see it or don't remember it, there is a Popeye Doyle, who's the detective, New York detective. He commandeers a civilian car and chases a subway train on an elevated track. And it is one of the most gripping, intense sequences you will see in film. And if you watch it, and you can find it on YouTube, there's no music. It is just pure adrenaline. Friedkin was inspired to do it by another film, and he actually spoke about that in an interview. I wanted you just to hear a little bit about it, and you'll get a little sense of William Friedkin, his brilliance, and I think this comes to life in this little sequence. This is him talking about the French Connection chase.
The inspiration for the chase in The French Connection came from the fact that I had recently seen Bullet. And while I thought Bullet was had a great chase scene and is an extraordinarily great movie, in analyzing the chase scene, I saw that what they had done was merely clear the streets of San Francisco, put two cars on the streets, and run them through fast. So the first thing that occurred to me was, in New York City, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on the streets at all times. I want to integrate these crowds into the chase. I'm not simply going to clear the streets, put my chase car on the street, and let it go through uninhibited. And then it came to me that there had been a number of films where a car was chasing a car. And so I thought, I've got to come up with something different. My motivation was simply to find a different way to film a chase. And then while I'm walking along the streets of New York thinking about it, I hear the subway rumbling below my feet. And then as I went into Brooklyn, I saw, to my amazement at that time, this is 1970, that there was still an elevated train. I integrated the Coney Island subway elevated train from Bay 26th Street to Bay 50th Street as part of this chase. And it occurred to me that I really didn't know how fast an elevated train could go at top speed. If it could go 100 miles or more, I couldn't do this chase. So I went to the head of the transit authority, and the first question I asked him was, how fast can a train go at top speed? And he said, well, we never let it get to top speed. I said, but if you did? He said, well, about 50 miles an hour. And it popped into my mind's eye. I had a chase, a car that the Gene Hackman character had commandeered on the street could turn around and follow an elevated train if the train was doing 50 miles an hour top speed and the car was doing 100 miles an hour, which literally this car was for 26 blocks with no streets cleared and with no permission to do it. And that's something I really wouldn't do today. But as a kid, then, I have to admit, I just wanted to get on film something that excited me.
I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And when you hear what went into it, wow. And what a sequence. And you can go back and just watch that one sequence if you want. You can find it, French Connection Chase. And I'd show it to you, but I don't want to get again. I just don't know that I can do it safely. I will say that The Exorcist is maybe a movie that you're more familiar with, and I'm just kind of noticing that a lot of people haven't seen The French Connection. You should see it. It's truly a tour de force of filmmaking from a young filmmaker. And The Exorcist, of course, is, brilliant filmmaking history. And he did to Live and Die in L.A., and there's a To Live and Die in L.A. chase scene, and that's terrific. So, you pick your spot, but Cruising, Rules of Engagement, a remake of 12 Angry Men. He directed episodes of The Twilight Zone, CSI, but his brilliance, I think, is there in To Live and Die in L.A., Exorcist, and French Connection. That trio. William Friedkin, Oscar-winning director, passes away at age 87.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have one other piece of trivia about William Friedkin, which you might enjoy, and I'll tell you this quickly, and then you can double-check this. I think this is absolutely true. I heard him tell the story multiple times. He couldn't get clearance. You heard him reference that for that chase sequence. Imagine shooting a chase in New York City and not getting clearance for it. It's outrageous to consider it today, right? So he couldn't get clearance to shoot in New York City, and he wanted this sequence where Gene Hackman commandeers the car and chases this elevated train, and he wanted all that other stuff going on around. He goes to one of the top guys at the train authority, the transit authority in New York, the Metro Transit Authority in New York. And he says, I want to shoot on this line. Can we do it? And the guy said, no, you can't. I can't shut down a part of our subway line and have you use it for a film. I just can't be done. And Friedkin said, there's no kind of permitting we can get. I mean, for this, he said, no, honestly. He said, if I permit this, you'll need to give me enough money to leave the country because they will fire me and I won't be able to continue here with the transit authority. So Friedkin says, well, exactly how much money would you need for us to do this and for you to have to leave the country? And the transit authority guy thinks and says, I don't know, $75,000. Now that might be
that's it.
No, well, that's the equivalent. Remember, this is 1972 or 73. That's probably the equivalent of $750,000 today. Okay, almost $1 million is what I would kind of do. And so Friedkin goes back to his people, I think, and gives the guy the money. And the guy closed down that part of the New York subway so they could shoot that sequence and did leave the country.
Oh, wow.
And actually moved to Jamaica or something like
that.
Jamaica or Bermuda. I forget what it was.
Like, my last hurrah and I'm out.
So everybody was on the level. It really did happen.
What?
So, I know. It's a crazy coda. It's a crazy little footnote to that story, to that film, but pretty wild. The French Connection, and William Friedkin, director. Amazing. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.